Good to go?
All right, good morning, everybody. Ready to sing today? All right. I stand in the presence of Jesus, the Nazarene, and wonder how He loved me, a sinner and a how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. And my sorrows He will carry on. And suffered how marvelous, how wonderful, and my soul shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. This face my life shall see. My joy to sing of His love for me. How marvelous, how wonderful, and my soul shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I missed y'all last week. Thanks to Courtney for filling in. I was contagious, so I didn't want to be around you guys. Thank you. So the question for today, I think that you will get it easier. I asked Courtney as a tester, and she did not know the answer. She was actually surprised. And I think you're going to know this, but I need you to raise your hand if you know this, okay? In 1960, on this day, 1960, what celebrity was promoted to sergeant in the U.S. Army? Jim.
Elvis.
Elvis Presley!
That was easy.
Yeah.
Courtney was right. She had no idea.
He was a sergeant in the army, that's easy.
A bunch of hands went up. I knew somebody young in there.
And his birthday's in January too.
He was, but he's saying.
So the other question, I didn't use it because I thought that would be a better one for y'all, but in 1690,
Elvis Presley.
what instrument was invented in Germany? What instrument? Very famous instrument in 1690.
1690.
No. It's funny because I was asking Gail, she gave me a big German title. It's not a German title, it's just a regular instrument that y'all would hear. Or no. Joe.
Violin?
No.
Oh, that's different.
Huh?
Tuba?
No, but close. Something in that area.
Ooh.
Clarinet. Yep. Not a German title at all.
Not in the same category. Clarinet is a wind.
Well, but you know, it's not a violin. Yes. Yes, sir.
Somebody said tuba.
Yes.
You said that's close. A clarinet and a tuba?
That's what Brandon said.
Okay. My defense is they're in the marching band together. They're in the
Oh.
marching band.
I hear you.
So they stand close
It's
together.
not like a piano or organ or a violin. They're in the marching band together.
Well, okay.
That's what I think
I
of.
know, right?
And I'll fight you on it. I'll fight you on it. Okay, Donna. They're rough today, Donna. So be careful.
Oh, I think I'm gonna be in trouble. Well, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy
New
This
Year.
is last week.
I missed you too.
Okay. A pastor in his Sunday sermon used "forgive your enemies" as his subject. After a long sermon, he asked how many were willing to forgive their enemies. About half held up their hands. Not satisfied, he spoke for another 20 minutes. and repeated his question. This time, he received a response of about 80%. Still unsatisfied, he lectured for another 15 minutes and repeated the question. With all thoughts now on Sunday dinner, all responded except one elderly lady in the rear. Mrs. Jones, are you not willing to forgive your enemies? I don't have any, Miss Jones. That is very unusual. How old are you? 93, Mrs. Jones. Please, 93, Mrs. Jones. Please come down in front and tell the congregation how a person can live to be 93 and not have any enemies in the world. The little sweetheart of a lady tottered down the aisle very slowly, turned around and said, "It's easy. I just outlived them all." A preacher, I guess this is all about preachers today. A preacher is teaching at the end of his sermon. He tells the congregation, now for the next week, I need everyone to read Leviticus chapter 28. It ties into my sermon. A week passes. The preacher reaches the pulpit and asks, how many of you read Leviticus chapter 28? Everyone raised their hands. The preacher looked and said, ladies and gentlemen, there is no 28th chapter to this Leviticus. Now let me start my sermon on lying. This is a little long,
That's fine.
One Sunday morning, an old cowboy entered the church just before service were to begin. Although the old man and his clothes were spotlessly clean, he wore jeans, boots that were very worn and ragged. In his hand, he carried a worn-out old hat and equal worn-out Bible. The church he entered was a very upscale and exclusive part of the city. It was the largest and most beautiful church the old cowboy had ever seen. In the city, the people of the congregation were all dressed in expensive clothes and accessories. As the cowboy took his seat, the others moved away from him. No one greeted, spoke to him, or welcomed him. They were all appalled at his appearance and did not attempt to hide it. As the old cowboy was leaving the church, the preacher approached him and asked the cowboy to do him a favor. Before you come back in here again, have a talk with God and ask him what he thinks would be appropriate attire for this worship. The old cowboy assured the preacher he would the next Sunday. He showed up for the service wearing the same ragged jeans, shirt, boots, and hat. Once again, he was completely shunned and ignored. The preacher approached the man and said, I thought I asked you to speak to God before you came back to our church. I did, replied the old cowboy. If you spoke to God, what did he tell you the proper attire should be for worshiping and here? Asked the preacher. Well, sir, God told me that he didn't have a clue what I should wear. He said, I've never been in this church.
Good morning, everyone. Donna stole my thunder. I was going to do because I saw it today, a joke about the lying one, except this one was from Mark, and it said, everybody read Mark 17. And come back the next Sunday, and he says, okay, who read Mark 17? Everybody's hand goes up, and he says, all right, we're going to do a sermon on lying today. There is no Mark 17, yeah. So when I heard you go Leviticus 28, I said, that's the same joke I got. That's always good. That's always good. Well, this morning, in preparing for this, I wasn't sure how to go, because when we think about what we're going to be going into, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's a lot of story. Once we get here and we move forward, there isn't too much that we can talk about in terms of instruction or discipline or kind of self-application. when it comes to the story that precedes through into the crucifixion. You know, it's a lot of telling of what happens, a lot of discussion, there's a lot of talking that goes on, especially in John when he does the different prayers, okay? And they're kind of self-explanatory for the most part. Well, then something caught my eye, and it was a certain word. And again, we're not going to go into the Greek or anything about the word, but what the word really does and what it means to us especially, and then what it means in terms of theology and this theological significance of it, I thought it was really interesting and something that can kind of bolster our faith when it comes to that. So we'll get to that when we get there. But this morning we are in Matthew 26.
Verse 36.
Verse 36. Steve wasn't here last week, so when I told him we'd be 36 and on, he says, well, last week it was 30. You guys must have spent a lot of time in 6 verses. He said, you guys had a lot of discussion. I said, no, I made a boo-boo and totally skipped the end of the Last Supper there, where he actually goes through and institutes communion. I completely spaced on that. So he said, okay, you covered a lot more. I said, yeah, we did. So this morning, I was a little ambitious again when I
Has
said
there
what
been
we're
a
gonna-
problem if we only covered 6 verses?
Oh, no, he was just saying there must have been a lot of discussion. Yeah.
Just for Laura, just for Laura.
Just, oh. It's funny, sometimes that happens. Hey, I've heard a preacher take one verse and then utterly tear it apart. I'm not that good, or that explicative, I guess, when it comes to those sorts of things.
The easy one, Russell, is Jesus wept. That'd be easy.
Jesus wept, there you go, the most humanizing verse in my opinion when it comes to Jesus, the entirety of the Bible, and the shortest verse too. So this morning, we are in 26, verse 36. And can I get someone to read? I want to read all the way down through 46. So if you can take those 10 verses there.
Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and his 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow, to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Finally, Finally, going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it be possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour? He asked Peter, he asked Peter, my eyes are messing me up here. He asked Peter, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. He went away a second time and prayed, my Father, if it not be possible for this cup to be taken away, unless I drink it, may your will be done. And when he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were very heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed a 3rd time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to his disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise and let us go. Here comes my betrayer.
So this passage I find is talked about quite a bit when it comes to the crucifixion, because it has to do with several different factors here. You have the factors of the humanity, both of Christ and of the disciples here. You have the separation of him going away with his close inner circle, the 3 of them, where he's asking them to be vigilant. There's a lot about prayer here. There's a lot when in talking about relationships of how he's kind of sorrowful, especially when he comes back and he sees that they're sleeping. There's a lot of things that go into this. But when I looked at the theological understanding of something, I thought about a specific word that pops up. And when he's talking to Peter there in verse 41, he says, watch and pray that you may not enter into what? Temptation. The word also means trials or tribulations. Okay? So don't enter into trials. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Now, before we get to that, that's what I was really talking about. It's going to kind of wrap around everything here when we get to it. But here we have Jesus, and he takes with him only 3 individuals, his really close inner circle. They go out, they go to Gethsemane. Again, this is a place outside of Jerusalem. And I can imagine what it looks like. I know that there's several people who in here may have been to Israel to see what they call Gethsemane. I watched a video that was about the area where apparently Lot was going into the mountains, and there's the pillar of salt where his wife was and all that. And I don't know if all that's true and real. I know those places actually existed at some point, but when it comes to the Garden of Gethsemane, was it kept up for 2,000 years? I'm not so sure about that. It could have been. But I don't know what it looks like or how far it is from Jerusalem. I know that they say it's just a short distance, like a mile or 2. They wouldn't have walked very far, and they sing a hymn as they're leaving Jerusalem. But they go out here, and he says to them, sit here while I go over there and pray. So he has all of the disciples that are with him, except for the 3. He has them all kind of take their rest and kind of relax. Is he really worried about what they're doing? About this group?
No,
No. What does he tell them to do?
sit.
Sit. That's it. He just says sit. What's going to happen if they sit? At this time of night, they're probably going to fall asleep. Is he really concerned about them doing that? No. He doesn't really express any concern about these individuals and what they're doing. He just says sit. You guys, your job is done. Everything that we've done previously, you're going to take it, you're going to learn it, you're going to hold it with you when you go from here. But this is what I'm going to have you do. So he takes, just as like many of us have, and I have one, but we have best friends. And here, Jesus on earth, he has his 3 best friends. Okay? So he comes and he expresses something to them that I think is very beautiful when he says, there in verse 38, when he says, my soul is very sorrowful. I'm full of sorrow. What do you think when you look at that? What do you think he's full of sorrow about? About, say it, Marcus?
Everything's about to happen.
Everything that's about to happen.
He's going to go through the trials and all of that, and then he's going to end up being crucified.
He's
I'd be
sorrowful.
worried too.
Right. Now what's funny is, does Jesus know that he's going to be resurrected?
Yeah.
I imagine so. That he's going to know this thing, that he's going to be resurrected, and yet, as Marcus says, he's still sorrowful about all these things that are to come. Why do you think he's sorrowful still about all this stuff if he knows what the end is?
Because he knows he's gonna have to go through it.
Because he
It's
knows
not
he has to
easy.
go through it.
Yeah, and he won't have his father for part of that time.
Right, he won't have his father part of that time.
And the people around him
physical
have to go
pain.
through it.
The people around him have to go through it.
The physical pain that he's getting ready to have to go through and the humility, like the spitting on and all of the ridicule that he's getting ready to go through, I think is right way in heaven. He was fully human.
What would be greater than the physical pain?
Well,
The nails.
More than that.
Emotional. Taking on the sin of the world.
Taking on the sin of the
heaviness
world.
and how it's going to bring it.
Something that no human has ever done. Have people been crucified before? Absolutely. We have different methods of execution. I'm not going to go into them. But we have those, and they have what they did. So people went through it, and they were able to go through those things, and they died because of them. And yet, Jesus says something that never since the foundation of the world or ever since has happened, that he himself takes on the entirety of all sin that is confessed and is all laid on him. Joe.
Okay, in 1 Peter, in verse 120, it says, this plan was set in motion by the all-knowing eternal God long before the world was created. And he was chosen before the creation of the world for that plan. He already knew about it way before the creation. So he was given that information.
Now what's interesting here, he's given this information, he knows it, he knows what he's going to face, so he's sorrowful. He expresses this to his friends. A lot of times, I don't think this group may struggle with it. You may. But when it comes to something, a little T word that we don't like to talk about sometimes, and that's therapy, a lot of times there are people who absolutely need therapy. I myself, it's a little bit different for me. I kind of have friends that I use in a therapeutic way. But I have someone who prescribes very wonderful medications to me that keep me from absolutely not wanting to move out of my bed in the morning. But therapy could be something that's very, very helpful. And here, Jesus is doing this with his disciples. Jesus is getting his therapy in two ways. The first way is he's expressing himself vocally to his best friends. He's saying, listen guys, there's two things I want you to do. I want you to remain here and watch with me, okay? So he's getting them prepared to do these two things. Why? Because he's sorrowful and he needs comrades. He needs someone that's going to bolster him. This is Jesus' therapy. He's going to be going before his Father, and he has his best friends here on earth. So he's got the two parts there. He has the physical, and he has the spiritual. And I think sometimes we miss one of those parts, either the physical of having a best friend that we express ourselves to, that we share our burdens with, that we kind of dump on, and we need to really have someone that we can do that with. Because so too, as Jesus expresses his humanity, we're just as human, or he is just as human as we are, and we need to express those things. So we need to have confidants, or like I said, a therapist that we can really kind of unload on and take everything out and say, listen, I need you with me at this time, even if they're not going to be right there with him, because at the same time he fulfills his spiritual therapy. He goes before his Father and he prays to him at a very deep level. This prayer, in my opinion, is just like Jesus wept, the epitome of Christ showing his humanity. What is the request when he goes before his Father, getting his spiritual therapy? He's kind of unloading on his Father. What is Christ's request of his Father?
Take that cup from me?
Take that cup from me. What does that mean, Joe?
Because to think about being sacrificed, he didn't want to go through that.
Say that again a little bit louder.
He knew he was going to be sacrificed, and he didn't really want to go through that, which somebody, he didn't want to go through that.
He didn't want to go through that.
Because he knew how horrible it was.
He knew how horrible it's going to be. A lot of times when we look at Jesus, and I've said this quite a bit, we look at Jesus as this absolutely perfect being who comes and just stands there like this. Or what's the paintings? The two fingers? You know, sometimes it's the whole hand, but a lot of times it's the two fingers, you know, the V for victory, whatever it be. We think of Jesus like that, you know, holding the Bible that didn't exist at that time, you know, and doing that. And that's the Jesus we get with the halo and all that. That's the Jesus we see. But there's a real Jesus who says, if it be possible, if it's possible, meaning if there's a way that this doesn't have to happen, take this cup from me. Let this cup pass from me. I don't want this to happen. But ultimately, what is his very next set of words that he says after he puts his request before God?
Not that it be my will, but your will.
Not as I will, but as you will. Again, Jesus is fulfilling that first part of the what we call the Lord's Prayer. As your will is done in heaven, let it be done on earth. Or on earth so as it is in heaven. We want God's will to be accomplished. And here Christ is putting his will to the test or to the temptation. Later on, when he comes forward, he comes and he sees his brothers here, his brothers that he's been with for so long, for up to 3 years at this point. He's been with them, and he comes and he finds them sleeping. Now, what did he request of these three? What did he say? There's two things.
Pray, wake up and pray.
Watch, right? Remain here, watch with me, and pray. He wants them to stay. He wants them to pray. He wants them to be ready for what's about to happen. And yet, he says to them there in verse 40, could you not watch 1 hour? Now he changes just from remaining and watching. He says, now watch and pray that you may not enter into what?
Temptation.
Why does he say that to the disciples?
It is kind
Because he knew what was coming.
He knows
There
what's
was gonna
coming.
be confrontation, like right around the corner when they came to arrest him. That's what I think. And if they weren't praying that they don't fall into temptation, you know, Peter cut the guy's ears off. I mean, he could have stabbed him in the heart, you know, I mean,
Right.
so I don't know, maybe that's what he was getting at, you know, if you don't fall into temptation of murdering these
Going
people.
further, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you-
The same thing she was saying.
Yeah. When I look at this, this is again something that I think is Jesus expressing something that's in his heart. Again, using his brothers as therapy. He says, you couldn't watch with me 1 hour, and I can imagine how he's saying this. He comes up, and some people say that, oh, I'm Jesus, you couldn't watch with me with 1 hour? No. I imagine he's like, guys, 1 hour? I've been praying for an hour, and you couldn't even just, you remained here, you got that part, that was the easy part, but you couldn't even watch for an hour. You couldn't watch to see what's going on. You couldn't do it. So then he puts a deeper expression out there, one that I think he himself is going through. When he says here, watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I don't just think that Jesus here is expressing this to the disciples, saying, you guys be prepared because the spirit's willing and the flesh is weak. I think that Jesus here is expressing what he's going through. He himself is expressing that keep praying, that you don't enter into temptation, just like he is too being tempted. He says the spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. So too for him, the spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. If I could get someone to go into James.
1 through James.
James 1.
Is that, blessed is a man who endured temptation? Is that the one?
Close, yep. James 1, 2 through 4.
Kind of all joy, yeah.
Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything.
Something that's interesting to me, and I don't think a lot of people fully understand this, it's theological. This is the big theology, okay? Here's the big T, the big theo. When it comes to theology, Jesus was made perfect through his suffering. Because he was, he was obedient. Sometimes we don't fully grasp the idea that Jesus himself, right at this moment, could utterly walk away. Because now, the God, has now taken on flesh and dwelt among us. He has become one with us, the Emmanuel. He's become one with us, and he has shared in the same sufferings. And this is where we take hope from that. Can I get someone to read Hebrews 12, 1 and 2? Hebrews 12, 1 and 2.
Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
How does this become possible? Because through his faith, he gets the endurance. Because of the trial that he's facing. And because of that, he's able to obtain this wonderful name. He endures the cross. He despises shame. We are to look to him as an example. We're to set off all this sin just as he did and run that race just as he did. And I'm going to read this in Philippians 2, verse 8. This is Christ here, being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And for this reason, for that reason that he became obedient to death on a cross, for this reason also God highly exalted him, bestowed on him the name which is above every other name, so that the name of Jesus every knee will bow, of those who are in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and that every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Christ has the option of absolutely walking away at this point from the duty that, as Joe said, from the foundation of the earth has been given to him. God, too, sets a trial before Christ. There is a temptation, because he is flesh, just like we are, to absolutely walk away from everything that he's been given, everything that he will be given. He will obtain the inheritance, sit down at the right hand of God, be Lord over all, and yet he has the option to say, forget it. Has anyone seen that movie? I think when I was a kid, my mom always disparaged it. I'd never actually seen it all the way through. But Martin Scorsese, I think it's The Last Temptation of Christ. Is that what it's called? The Last Temptation. Has anyone seen that? No? It's about where Jesus is on the cross and his mother's there, and he has the opportunity to just come off the cross. And he comes off the cross and he has a child and all these things, and he gets to a certain point and he realizes that it's Satan that's been tempting him during this time, and then time rewinds when he says that I'll go through it, and he's on the cross and he stays on the cross. It's very heretical, I think would be the word to use. But it's interesting because he has the option to not go through with this. And I really love, we've been through Hebrews a little bit, but I love how Hebrews expresses that even more when it talks about temptation. In Hebrews 4, verse 14, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to our confession. Verse 15, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things just as we are, yet without sin. So, because of that, what do we get to do? Therefore, verse 16, therefore let us approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace for help in time of our need. We don't just have a Jesus who goes in that super pious way that we look at, goes to the cross and it's all roses and everything, and he's up there, and when he's done, he knows he gets to rise again 3 days later. We have a Jesus who is tempted in every way just as we are, all the sins of the flesh culminating in his requirement to die that he's able to say no to. And he requested of his Father that he not go through this, and yet he still walks through that very thing. In Hebrews chapter 2, the end of Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 14, therefore, since the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise also took part of the same, being made in flesh, that through death he might render powerless he who had the power of death, that is the devil, and might free those through the fear of death who were subject to slavery all their lives. For assuredly he does not give help to angels, but he gives help to the descendant of Abraham. Therefore, because of what he's gone through, because of the death and what he wants to do in sanctifying all these slaves, that's us in sin, therefore he had to be made like his brothers in all things, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest, just like we talked about in chapter 4 in Hebrews there, in things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for sins of the people. That's being a replacement for us that appeases God when it comes to a sacrifice. For since he himself was tempted in that which he has suffered, he is able to come to the aid of those who are tempted. I love that I don't just have a Jesus that suffered on a cross, was just ultimately, he goes and he doesn't, and it's no big deal, and he goes in the grave and he comes back out. We have a Jesus that sweat as if drops of blood, as it says in John. He sweat. He's sorrowful because of everything he's going to go through. The death on the cross, the mocking, the spitting, the taking on of all the sin of the world. There's a joy set before him that he's going to go do it, and yet, at the same time, he has the ability to refuse. He doesn't want to do this thing, and ultimately he says, not my will, but yours. And I think in all of that, that we get to take heart that we have a Jesus that doesn't just go through these things like it's nothing. He hurts with us. He is pain with us. He was tempted with us. And yet he comes through perfectly. So when we go before him and we have fallen in our temptations, we've said something we shouldn't have, we've done something we shouldn't have, or didn't do something we should do, the things we ought to do and don't do, the sins that we commit, we go before that Christ and say, I was tempted and I failed. And he says, I understand. I get it. I was right there. I understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
That is my Jesus.
I'm going to edify all this that you're talking about. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It says, these things happened to them as an example and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So, if you think you can stand, be careful lest you don't, you fall. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide you a way out. There's a lot to that.
I think it's important when we think of trials, not just the word temptation, like I said, but the word is also interpreted there as trials or tribulations. When we go through these things, Jesus, it's not uncommon to man. I think that Jesus' temptation is a little bit different. What he's going to go through is far exceeding anything that we could even possibly imagine. I can't fathom that. In fact, and I've referenced this before, in Revelation, I think it's 12, I could be totally wrong, when it refers to Christ having a name on his thigh that nobody else knows. I think it refers specifically to the fact that Jesus goes through something that no one could go through. The fact that Jesus goes through the suffering that he does on the cross, not just in terms of it physically, because again, he died before they thought he would. He dies, and they're like, oh, we should be breaking his legs, and yet we're not, as I talked about last week. He dies before that because he just doesn't absorb all the pain of death. He takes on the entirety of the sin of the world upon himself. And I think what's interesting too, at the same time, he and the Father are one, as he talks about in John. They're the same being in spirit. God himself, the Father, does not veil in flesh. God the Son veils in flesh. And yet in that moment, that spiritual connection, when he's crucified, is utterly separated. It's broken. His Father turns away. So I can imagine that he's never felt anything in terms of that either. And he takes all of this upon him at one instant. And I don't think that anyone's able to comprehend this name that's given him that no one knows, because he himself is the only one who's able to endure or goes through what he goes through. And I think it all culminates in this situation where he's given that temptation. In fact, again there in verse 42, where he says the spirit's willing and the flesh is weak, and he goes into verse 42 there, back in Matthew 26, it says again for the second time, he went away and prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass, unless I drink it, your will be done. His prayer changes a little bit. It's not just a prayer of, take this from me, but listen, if it can't pass unless I go through it, then I want your will to be done. His attitude's changing. You ever had that prayer about change my attitude, God? How many people pray that prayer every day? Every single day. I appreciate the honesty. Every single day I pray that prayer. There's always something that I'm going to encounter that I'm going to have a sour attitude about. I know that there's something that it's going to be. Whether it be something that happens in traffic, or yesterday I had to go put straw down in my mother-in-law's flower beds. And before I got there, I said, oh my gosh, I got to put the straw down. We got to pull this apart. The bales have been sitting there for almost a year. They're probably all rot. They're probably torn apart. Oh my gosh, I get out there. And of course, this whole time I'm driving and I'm praying, God, give me good attitude. Give me good attitude. Let me be refreshed in this. Let me do what you want me to do. This is a good thing. I get out there. I get the wheelbarrow. I cut open the first bag. I throw it down the wheelbarrow and I start breaking it apart, and it's taken forever. And that sour attitude starts. It's all when it's building up. It's like, oh my gosh, why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I could be playing video games or something else. I could be doing something that I want to do, and here I am doing this. And then before I knew it, after 15 minutes, I'd accomplished a big swath, about 5 feet of that flower bed. And I said, why are you whining so much? Why are you complaining so much about such a simple thing? You're doing God's will. You're helping someone who can't do this. And here you are complaining that you get to do God's work. Isn't that just human? Isn't that so human? So my attitude started to change. And then before I knew it, I was almost done. And I was almost done because I ran out of straw, not because I was almost finished. And I said, oh, I'm so glad straw. But at the same time, I'd been there for about an hour and a half doing it, and she said it looks really good. And that meant something to me when she said it looks really good, because I always wonder if I'm doing something the way that somebody else wants it. I know the way that I want it done, but I don't know how other people want it done. But she really enjoyed it. So I got to take that attitude and say that, Russell, you can't start with a bad attitude. You start with a good attitude, and it gets better. It always just gets better. You've got to do that. So that's something that I pray about all the time. And to here, we have Jesus saying, if it can't pass from me unless I drink it, if this is how it's got to be, I want to do your will. Just like we can pray all the time. I do it in the car. A lot of you do it before you start your day. You have your prayer time. That's usually when I start my day, is when I'm in the car. So that's how I get things rolling, get that prayer. Change my attitude today. Let me have a better day. Let me want to do the work that you've set before me. So I love that he changes his prayer just a little bit when he talks to his Father. And then again, verse 43, he comes again. He finds them sleeping yet again. Does he say anything to them this time? Right there, verse 43, 44. Does he talk to them again?
He just
No.
lets them go.
Say it.
He just lets them go.
He just lets them go. Again, I think because he's Jesus and he understands the temptation. They're there. They don't know what's about to happen. They don't fully comprehend this dipping in the cup and eating the morsel with me and going out and do what you're going to do and why is it Judas? Is it me? It's not me. Oh, it's this one. And they don't fully comprehend all of this. And so they fall asleep, and Jesus understands. And because he understands, he leaves them again. He went away, prays for the 3rd time, saying the same words again. If it can pass from me, let it be, but your will be done. Then he comes back to them, and I like what it says here. Someone read what Jesus first says there, that first sentence in verse 45. It says, then he came to his disciples and he says to them, what's that? Who has something there? What's that first thing he says?
Sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners.
Who else has something different than, did you say sleep on now?
Are you still sleeping and resting?
Are you still sleeping and resting?
Sleep and take your rest later on.
Sleep and take your, yeah, that's what I have. Sleep and take your rest later on. That's ESV. It's sort of like saying, listen, there's a time where you guys can sleep. When is that time?
No.
It ain't right now. It's not right now. He says, see, or I like, who has it? Behold. I think someone said behold. Does anyone know that that's what that word literally means? The word behold. We use that word quite a bit. We'll say behold. The word translated is more like, look at this. Or, here's the thing that I'm presenting to you. It's not just behold. I think we kind of miss some of that. It's like the truly, truly, or verily, verily. It's an expression of, there's a big thing that's about to happen. So he says, see, or look at this thing. He's making a big expression here. The hour is at hand, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Again, he's talking about Gentiles, not Jews. He's talking about Gentiles. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer's at hand, or the one who's handing me over is here. Again, Jesus being an understanding individual, being God, being fully man, not 50% of one, 50% of the other, 100% God, 100% man, understands what we go through, and yet sometimes he says, listen guys, you have time to sleep, you have time to do this. Russell, you have time to play video games later on. Behold, this is the job that I have set before you. Behold, this is the thing that you ought to be doing. Right now here, the Son of Man is betrayed. This is where you're supposed to be present in this moment, and yet he still understands that we have weaknesses. He still understands that we have temptations. He's been through all of that, and that's the kind of Jesus that we worship, and that's the kind of Jesus that we have that we can hold on to. Yeah, Joe.
One more thing on the temptation that you brought up, James chapter 1. The commentary brings it out. It says, temptation comes from evil desires inside us, not from God. It begins with an evil thought and becomes sin when we dwell on the thought, and then it's like a snowball that's rolling downhill. It grows more destructive the more we let it have its way. The best time to stop temptation is before it is too strong, gets to be too strong, or moving too fast to control it. I like the way it puts that.
When Jesus is going through Samaria, there's a phrase there where he says, or it says, and I'm not sure which gospel it's in, but it says that he turns himself towards Jerusalem, or he sets himself to Jerusalem. This is where Jesus himself is saying, okay, I have a purpose, I have a mission, I'm going to go do that mission. Here too, he's fulfilling that mission, even though there's a desire there, like you said, there's a desire that says, I don't want to do this, because he's still flesh, but he still goes through with it, and ultimately in that perseverance and that endurance, because of his faith, because he has an ultimate faith, one that I don't think that we can fully comprehend, but one that he himself has. That's beautiful. Thank you, Joe. Does anyone else have anything for that section there? The temptation of Jesus, the prayer.
So where are we stopping?
47 will be next week. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Russell.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's a professor. He's very good. I thoroughly enjoy it. Huh? Nowhere near.